Hi everyone and welcome to our Realize New Revenue from Existing Content webinar. My name is Audrey Poulain and I'm the Marketing Communications Specialist here at Integration New Media, or INM for short. I'd like to also take this opportunity to introduce you to Andrea Simmons, the presenter of today's session. Andrea is our Director of Marketing and Business Development. Feel free to ask questions at any moment during the presentation in the question box on your screen. I'll be watching for questions throughout the session, and we have dedicated time at the end to answer them. Please note that this webinar is recorded for further viewing. So let me introduce you to Andrea.
Great, thank you, Audrey. I appreciate that introduction. We're going to talk a little bit today about how publishers can realize revenue from existing content. So we're going to get into our agenda and take a look at what the topics are we're going to cover. So first we're going to start with a couple of introductions. We're going to talk about a little bit about who INM is and why we're presenting this information. Then we're going to look at some industry stats to really understand why publishers are looking to generate new revenue. We're going to take a look at some alternative revenue strategies that publishers have pursued today. And then we're also going to dig into the role of past issues and the archive and talk about how that comes into play. And then we're going to talk about how to get started with an archive project. You know, what elements go into it, how do you get things moving. And finally, we're going to look at some case studies from publishers that have gone forward today and are leveraging this technology successfully. And then we're going to have just a quick close with some Q&A, and we're going to talk about next steps. So first we're going to start with a quick introduction to INM. INM has been around for just over 24 years now. We were founded in 1989 to help companies who had a vision of delivering engaging solutions to their users. And most of those solutions were really driven on the concept of publishing information in an interactive or an engaging way. So organizations that were looking to do rich experiences through kiosks in the early days, through desktop computers, then later on CD-ROM and DVD, and now on the web. That's been the foundation of the work that we've done over the last 24 years. So the technology's changed, the audiences have changed a little bit, but that foundation model of engaging experiences in the sector are really the foundations that we build our business on. We have an in-house team of developers, designers, integrators, project managers, and operations staff, and we come together to build projects for clients in all different industries across the globe. In the publishing sector specifically, here are some of the clients that we work with today. All of these clients that I'm mentioning are clients that we're doing offline projects with. We also have projects in the online sector that we do work with as well. The Taunton Press, for example, is one of our clients that we've been doing offline archive and DVD projects for nearly 6 years now. We've done some of their flagship titles like Fine Woodworking, Fine Home Building, Fine Cooking, and Threads. We've worked with Comback Publishing on multiple titles as well. We're 5 plus a few more in the works with them. We are also working with Hoffman Media. We did Taste of the South last year for the holiday season, and we've got a few more titles coming up with them. And just this year we've added Reader History Group to our client base for these solutions as well. We've done World War II magazine with them. So we've worked with a number of different publishing houses to solve some of their challenges for generating new revenue. Now when we talk about this need for publishers to generate new revenue, where does this come from? Well, first, you know, anyone who's in the publishing sector certainly understands the challenges that this industry has been facing over the last decade, starting back in 2003 and really getting progressively more challenging every year after that. Newsstand circulation took a huge hit in North America and pretty much globally, but North America was particularly difficult from a market perspective. So, you know, in 2008, we saw double-digit declines in circulation, and then cumulative year after year declines from that point forward. You know, circulation was taking a big hit, and at the same time, ad revenue was taking a very deep dive. So these factors combined created a very difficult market challenge for publishers. So in the last decade alone, from 2003 to current year, advertising revenue has dropped to just 45% of what it once was, which is a huge decrease.
So publishers were really struggling to find ways to recoup some of this revenue that they were losing. And unfortunately, a lot of publications stopped publishing. A lot of publishers reduced the size of their magazines just because they really didn't have a choice with these factors. But, you know, one glimmering sign of hope here when we look at these numbers is you also see in the same period of time the online revenues have increased. They've gone almost to threefold in that same time period. Now, when we compare the numbers, they're still a fraction of the total revenue source. So it's not like they're going to replace the lost revenue from a print perspective, but certainly is something for publishers to look at. And when we talk about digital, you know, it is still a small part of the total mix, but that part is growing on a year-over-year basis. So in 2012, we saw just under 7% in terms of digital platform revenue. And in 2016, that number is planning to go up to somewhere around the 15% mark. So that does bring a specific, a new revenue source for publishers, but it certainly doesn't replace all that they've lost in the past. And the thing to keep in mind with looking at these digital numbers is digital isn't just pure profit center for businesses in the publishing sector, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to look at changing business models, look at changing technology and investing in new technology and really working it into the business, that it is kind of a cost center for publishers as well. Now, how have publishers reacted to these challenges, and what are they looking at as new revenue challenges or channels for them? First, obviously, the web has been big in publishing. We see a picture of Rolling Stone's website here. This is one way that publishers have brought content forward, and they've introduced new advertising opportunities through those channels. But certainly mobile has been a very big part of that as well. First with digital editions, bringing out individual copies of publications on mobile devices. Then with digital newsstands, which help them to get new audience and new exposure. And then finally with mobile applications for, you know, cross-platform mobile apps or any of the native applications that publishers are building, they're looking at adding in additional content value and adding in new delivery mechanisms for their content. But one thing that publishers have often overlooked is this concept of the inventory that they have. Most publishers are sitting on a gem of untapped revenue, which is really their previous content. In the publishing sector, we all know that content is very expensive to produce. It's the most expensive item in the publishing mix. So, you know, taking new photographs, adding new content, getting original content in different formats is very difficult. So publishers today often have an inventory of content that's going untapped in today's market. So there's back issues that they've had for maybe 3, 5, 10, 20, 70 years, and they've got all kinds of great resources that they can be sharing and using for revenues. A lot of publishers today already sell individual back issues to their clients, so this is just an extension of that model to package those back issues in a way that your power fans or your Uber fans can own the whole collection of your publication and really leverage that collection anytime that they want. So when we're talking about a searchable archive collection, what we're talking about is that collection of all your back issues that's packaged nicely in a fashion that your readers can browse, search, read on screen, and really have as a portable and quick reference for your publication. So it allows you to make new revenue by selling a new product to the same audience that you're already working with, but it also provides a lot of benefits for your readers. If you have readers today that are Uber fans that collect every issue of your publication, that's probably adding up to quite a bit of space in their garage or in their den that they may want to free up for other purposes. So if you think about, for example, Model Railroader that we see here on screen, this was a 75-year collection. So if you were a really big fan of the publication, you would have shelves upon shelves upon shelves of print copies. And if you wanted to refer back to a copy, there wasn't really any master index or any master view of that history of all the content. So a reader would need to pick up an issue and thumb through and say, okay, what year was that article in that I was looking for? Or I remember reading a really great piece the other year that I wanted to refer back to one of my friends, and it became a bit of a cumbersome process to manage that information. So it becomes a space saver as well as a time saver and a really strong resource for people when they have content that they're passionate about and content that they want to interact with. So when we talk about a searchable archive, it's more than just that collection of magazines. It's really how you present and organize that collection so that it's something that your readers have additional value from. So when we look at the interface here, this is, for example, Discover Magazine. We're going to talk a little bit more about this project later in the webinar, but what this is anyone who's coming in to look for past issues is they can browse by cover, because they may recognize, I want the issue that has, a particular person or a particular graphic on it, and they can look that way. They can look through by list view if they are just scanning for a specific month or year. They can go through all the different features and access the content. So we're talking about a packaged experience out of your archive collection. And also providing access to full issues, which I think is really important. Obviously, getting the information of which issue it's in is certainly very helpful, but having that full in-context view of the publication and the ability to search and browse and go through that publication is also really important. So now that you're sold on the idea of archives and you think it's a great way you can generate some additional revenue as a publisher, let's look at the process. So how do you get from that stack of magazines today in your archive room to a go-to-market strategy for a DVD archive for your title? So we're going to walk through the 6 steps that you'll want to look at, and we're going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail. So first we're going to evaluate the project. Does it make sense for us? Then we're going to look at how we get that information scanned and OCR'd. We're going to talk a little bit about what our OCR means. And we're going to look at what goes into building an index. How do you create that? What do you need to have for that? And then we'll talk about, the build or buy option in terms of technology for creating that archive. And we're going to talk a little bit about testing your archive and the go-to-market strategy. So first we're going to talk about evaluation and how you evaluate the feasibility of your project. So the first thing I would say is really you want to ask yourself the question, do you have the right type of content for a searchable archive? So certain content lends itself nicely to an archive, while other content doesn't bring as much value. So if we look at the titles that certainly have a lot of appeal, they're the ones that have timeless content. So the ones where you may be looking to find a recipe, you may be looking to pull up a pattern or pull up a project plan. A good example is if you're in the photography space and you want to learn how to look at photo composition. The camera that you use to take that photo will change from year to year, but the principles of what goes into good lighting, into a good frame for the photo, they're the same now as they really were back in 1978 kind of thing. So that content, if there's a really good article on that piece of content, it would be applicable today as applicable today as it was then. So this type of kind of longevity and type of timelessness to your content is really important for an archive. Where if you're looking at, say, a hot news magazine where the topics change very quickly, it may not be as interesting to have an archive of that type of content. Once you decide that the content's a good fit, you want to look and see that you have copies of every issue. So magazines can change hands over the year. Over the years, they can go from publisher to publisher. So there may be holes in your collection, or there may be issues that you're missing. So that can be handled, but certainly you want to look to see if you have access to all of that information and kind of see what quality those publications are in. So are they dog-eared a little bit? Are they highlighted? Do they have marks on them? Or are they a nice clean copy that you can share with your readers? And then the third item I'd really encourage you to verify is whether you have the rights to reproduce those back copies. So some of the publishers that we've worked with have had contracts with writers or photographers that they've worked with over the years, and they didn't actually indicate in those contracts whether there were distribution rights for the content in a digital format, or sometimes the author or the photographer actually indicated, no, you cannot distribute this digitally. So this is something you'll want to look at, what those relationships have been and what those parameters of usage are on your content. And there's ways to work around one or two photographs or articles that are not permissive for digital reproduction, but if it applies to a good chunk of your content, that could be an issue. Now, often you can go back and renegotiate those if you're still in contact with the suppliers, but certainly something to consider as you're moving forward with your plan. And the other thing you want to look at is whether you have frequent requests for your back issues, because that may be a really strong indication that there's a market for this product for you. If you have a lot of people coming to your site and searching and contacting your customer service or looking for the option of back issues, that's something that you really want to see how you can capitalize on and how you can present information with those channels so that you can showcase your product once you've got it built and ready to go. Now, once you decide, let's move forward, how do you get those stacks of magazines into digital format? So you'll want to gather all your issues and really decide what you're going to scan. Make sure that that quality is there in terms of the final copies. And you'll want to, at this point as well, determine whether you have more than one copy of your physical magazine. So if you're sitting there with your last issue in hand of a 1972 classic edition, you don't want to have to slice that and shred it. That's going to break your heart. So you want to see what you've got and how you're going to scan the content so that you can preserve your print legacy as well and your historic copies. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to get a quote from a printer, so you can work with someone that you're going to build the archive with, or you can work with an independent printer maybe in your, or a scanner, sorry, in your neighborhood. And you'll want to get a tally of the number of pages that you have. You know, for example, if you've got 350 issues with X number of pages on average, give a rough sample of size for your collection. And then also check to make sure, one of the things publishers often overlook is that sometimes form factor changes for the magazine over the years, and you may have different measurements and sizes for your magazine. So that's something that a publisher, a printer or a scanner would really need to know and be aware of so that they can make sure they have the right size scanning equipment. Because if you had a broadsheet large magazine at some point and then you reduce to an 8.5 by 11 format, they need to be equipped with the technology to handle both sizes and formats for you for that digitization effort. You'll also want to look at, again, the type of scanning, and we're going to cover that in the next slide, is whether you go destructive or non-destructive. So if you have the extra copies, you can go with a cheaper and more standard scanning process. But if you don't have those extra copies, as you see on screen here, there's a unique style of scanner that allows you to preserve your magazine and just do it as images. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And you'll look at the quality of the scan. So if you have like hundreds or thousands of documents, you may be looking to bring your scan quality down slightly so that you don't have to worry about file size. Because if you do a super high resolution scan, it looks gorgeous, but you're going to have 9 DVDs. So you want to look at how you can balance and come to the right balance of nice presentation from a resolution perspective, but still a decent file size so that you can have your collection packaged in a nice way. And also handling of documents. So, are there staples that need to be removed? Are there bindings that need to be cut? How is the publisher going to handle those documents? Are they going to return you the files in the end, or can you just have them shredded? So some of these things that you'll want to consider, those all go into the total cost of digitizing your collection. So you can get a quote and see what that's going to cost from that perspective. When we're talking about the different types of scanning, we mentioned there's 2 different types. One, if you can destroy the copies after scanning, that's a relatively low-cost process. So it's taking your magazine and doing a nice clean cut on the binding and making sure that the individual pages go through a sheet feeder. And this works really well for new books and new magazines when the pages are still very thick and glossy, and you don't have any issues. They go smoothly through the sheet feeder. It's a lovely process. When you talk about non-destructive scanning, this is typically used for older magazines, thinner pages. They may have, bends and tears in the pages that you want to work around. Or it may be that last copy of a document we were talking about. It's a bit more expensive, but you wind up preserving your single copy. And there's really two major models of this. One is a flatbed scanner, where someone actually opens the magazine and lays it down on the scanner. And then the other one is more of a mount, magazine rack mount, where you put your magazine on it, and there's cameras on either side that take high-resolution images of the pages and string it all together into one image document. So in either case, the end product of this process is an image file. So it's something that you're going to have maybe a PDF format spit out, but it doesn't have anything except for images in it. So that's when you go through a process called optical character recognition. And with optical character recognition, or OCR as we call it, it translates your scanned images into machine encoded text. So that means that you can select the text, you can edit or search for a phrase, you can leverage screen readers and other text-to-speech functionality. So if you've got content that you want to make available from an accessibility perspective to anybody who uses screen readers, that's really important that you go through this process. It also allows you to do a process we call indexing, where you take all of the content in that document and you make it available. So when we talk about indexing, there's two types of indexing that we do. We do a automatic indexing process, and this is something we often work with publishers to do, is where we do a pass on the PDF files with some technology that we've built that allows you to extract all of the information and all of the words on the page, the full text of the page, into a format that you can then use to power your search capabilities in the archive collection. So that's one process. But on top of that, we often recommend to publishers that they look at their content and they build a manual index to supplement those search results. So when we were talking before about the value of a search archive collection, part of that comes in to being able to categorize your content, being able to search by author, search by keyword perhaps, search by a department or a category depending on the content that you're making available. So we often work with publishers to make sure that they have the right structure for their content and that the search functionality makes sense in context with the content of the magazine. So we work with publishers and suggest that they assign somebody who has a strong knowledge of the content and the articles, who can define those keywords, define those categories, and align the content to the categories. So that's part of the process as well. Once you have all those PDF files that are indexed and ready to go, and you have that index ready to combine with it, you look at how you're going to present that information. So in various contexts, publishers have built their own archives. They've built a solution where they may combine PDF files with an index that's hyperlinked, and you can go through the manual index and choose a PDF to open in something like Acrobat Reader. That's one approach, but certainly we feel that what brings a lot of value is the user interface and the additional functionalities that are delivered as part of it. So one thing that we've done with our application is we've built it to look like a lot of the rich applications that are out there today that customers engage with. So they kind of have an expectation of a level of presentation and engagement, and this user experience helps to deliver that. It's also a standalone application, so you remove any sort of dependencies on third-party technology. So if you're pushing the user out to use Acrobat Reader, they will have to make sure they have it, they have the right version, they keep it updated. There's all types of reliances that just may be more challenging for a customer service perspective. So we've looked at a solution, we'll talk a little bit more about our product later, but we've looked at a solution where we integrate the reader directly into the application. So everything's kind of self-contained, and you test the application once and you should be good from a reliance perspective from that point forward. So So once we build the application and we make that available, testing is critical. This is something that we have very rigorous test plans that we run for every release. We also work with our publishing clients to help them understand user feedback, and one of the pieces that we recommend is they take a couple of the early discs and they give them to some of their typical users just to test out and to try. So, you know, pass it around to someone who fits the target audience and the target profile, let them boot up the application, make sure they can walk through the processes and the steps and everything's comprehensible and easy for them. We also test for differences in hardware configuration. When you're selling a product to the consumer market, everybody has a different operating system. Some people upgrade, some people don't. You've got Mac, you've got PC, you've got Linux, and you want to really get a sense of where your application works flawlessly and put together a recommended configuration or specifications for the title so that you can make those available on the packaging and really reinforce that with your customer service team. So the other thing that we will absolutely help with, and I think is really important from a planning perspective, is what your go-to-market strategy is. So often publishers come with, you know, strong relationships with their marketing team, their web team. They've got a lot of this figured out, but things like the timing of your release are really important. So if you've got a publication that's a very hot holiday gift for a certain target market, you want to make sure that your discs are ready to go in October so you can hit those critical retail dates in November. So, you know, you want to be online for Cyber Monday. You want to make sure that you're doing the right type of promo in your print publications and that you're really leveraging all of your channels to promote this launch and to promote the availability to the right target audience. There's other titles that really have a nice play with Mother's Day or Father's Day, so it's good to consider who your target audience is and what some of those purchase catalyst dates might be so that you align your release to be available for those. And one thing I just want to talk about is a lot of publishers create an archive collection and then they think, okay, that's great, I've got this archive, but what happens the next year? You know, one of the challenges that publishers have obviously is that hopefully they're still publishing content and they're adding new issues every year that they're going to have to integrate into that archive eventually. So how do you do that? Well, if you plan appropriately, there's ways that you can add subsequent years to your DVD collection. So for example, in this model, this publisher has a magazine collection that goes up to 2012. And we'll just say, you know, this is their 2012 annual collection we see at the same time. These were both produced in parallel. But then when 2013 comes along, you know, they may be looking to produce a 2013 annual collection that includes all of their 6 issues for the year. It's a bi-monthly publication. And then they would include on that annual collection the full index for the archive. So we'll see a little bit later an example of this, but you can actually make your search functionality work for the entire collection of the title. And then you can import, if you already own the archive or if you want to purchase the archive in collaboration with it, you can import all of the DVDs from the archive collection into the new disc so that you have that full collection available and full search capabilities to look at any issue from 2013 all the way back to 1985. So these things can be built into your strategy as a publisher so that you can address new content on a regular basis as well. So it's really interesting to look at what that expansion plan is after an archive. So that's a little bit about how you get started. Now we're going to take a look at a couple of publications that we've worked with publishers on. So this one is Taste of the South, and that meringue pie looks just delicious. So it's an archive collection that includes a lot of content that has to do with food and with restaurants and with recipes and with party planning in the South. So it was an archive collection that they released for the 2012 holiday season. It includes 37 issues and about 4,000 plus pages of content, so 8 years of the magazine in total. And this is a magazine that they had a lot of requests for back issues, and they had a lot of people asking about previous magazines. So they decided to put a collection together. and make it available at a price point of $49.99 on their website. They already had an e-commerce store in place to sell other materials like cookbooks and other print sorry, not out of print, but so other print issues from previous magazines. So they had that in place already. So this was just a new addition to the website. So as we've seen a couple of screenshots, they've put together the whole collection. You can browse by cover, you can sort by keyword. They've got the magazine branded to be part of the color scheme of the publication's brand. It's really nicely presented. They also have this nice article view that you can go in and flip through the pages. If you decide, okay, that buffalo chicken wrap looks great, I want to make that for lunch, you can also print off a copy of that particular recipe and take it up to the kitchen with you if you don't want to bring your laptop up. So there's a lot of flexibility for readers to be able to kind of experience the magazine in a digital format. There's a lot of search functionality in this archive collection as well. They have a lot of recipes, so what they've opted to do is include categories for those major sections. So if you go in and you want to do a search and you want to type in the word pecan, for example, and you're looking for a recipe for a great pecan pie, you may want to narrow your search down to just main dishes or to poultry, or not poultry, sorry, to pies, so you don't get a recipe for something like pecan chicken. So you want to really limit that search functionality just so you can get the results quickly. You can also, in the archive collection, we have a bookmark functionality. So if you are a party planner and you're looking for examples of maybe trays or centerpieces that you want to focus on, you can create folders within your bookmarks for things like recipes or things like ideas that you want to capture, and you can rename those and reorganize those however you wish. So it's a great tool for collecting information, kind of an offline version of Pinterest for people that want to look at just specific type of content. So that's Taste of the South, and you know, that's been a very successful publication from what I've been told. You know, certainly some anecdotal information. I think that's been a good profitable publication for them. The next case study we're going to take a look at is Fine Woodworking, and this is one of those collections we were talking about earlier with the annual collection. So this is from the Taunton Press. This is one of their flagship titles, and they have for the last 6 years put together an archive collection of their magazine, which included from the first year they published straight through to the current year. And that gets revamped every year, so you know, up to 2011, and the next year is up to 2012, etc. And they started building these annual collections that include 6 issues from the magazine plus a special edition issue that they produce every year. And so this allows users the flexibility to kind of pick and choose the content that they want. So if they're not really interested in content from 20 years ago, then they may want to opt to just purchase the annual collection for 2011, 2012, 2013, and you can import the PDFs from a previous annual collection into the next one. And each annual collection comes with the complete index for the magazine. So I'll just flip through one thing here, which is kind of interesting. You can see, if you're looking for a topic, you can actually see the 7 issues that you have, and you can do a cross-publication search through, you know, their special editions and through all of the back issues for something, and see which magazines it appears in. So if you look here and you say, okay, that's the magazine I'm actually looking for, you can click on it and it'll tell you which archive it's on. So it'll say this is in the 2011 annual collection or our archive collection, contact us to purchase it. So you have some flexibility on how you want to buy things. This is a $34 price tag. Most of the annual collections are somewhere over $100 because they contain years and years and years of content. So you have a little bit of freedom to play around with how you want to buy the content. And you'll see here there's an import button right here on the screen. So you can import all previous issues, you can import just an annual collection, whatever you've got a DVD on hand for, you can do a content import. So that's an interesting model for publishers. And finally, we're going to take a look at a case study from Discover magazine. This was a really, well, it is a very popular science magazine, but it was a very popular science magazine in terms of requests for back issues that Comback Publishing had. And they wanted to put together a 30-year collection that spanned 1980 to 2010. So this includes 358 issues, and they had a lot of annual roundup special publications and a lot of out-of-print back issues. So, you know, they were getting requests for back issues that they just didn't have the ability to print and make available. So this addressed that customer service desire to really make sure that customers could access all the content. So in this particular archive, you know, things like that integrated help file that comes as part of this solution helps users understand how to read, how to filter, how to leverage the archive collection. This filter by department functionality was also really important. They had a lot of people that were interested just in specific decades. They only wanted to see scientific research from 1990 to 1999. They wanted to be able to filter out the results by each particular decade and break it down. So they've included this functionality, and you can pull up your results that way. So that's a good sense of a couple of case studies.
And some information about how to get started. So now we're going to take some questions. So if you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A box on the webinar interface.
Great, thank you, Andrea. So while we wait for some questions, here's one that I hear a lot in talking to clients. How much does an archive project typically cost?
Okay. Now it's going to depend on what
particular features or functionality you really want to include in the archive collection, and whether you're having that scanning done with a third party or if you're having the scanning done through a company like ours. Usually the mandates that we have for archive collections span somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. And that includes, you know, the production, that includes the testing, that includes the graphic skinning of the interface, those types of things. So it's a pretty reasonable cost for publishers in terms of coming up to speed with an archive collection.
Great. And can readers access the PDFs from the DVD, or is it protected in any way?
Well, that's a good question, actually.
Because it can go either way, in the sense that we've had publishers we've worked with that wanted to make those archive PDFs available. They kind of said if people want to jump onto the DVD and access a copy of it directly, that's okay with us. Others wanted to really make sure that that content was well protected, that it had a password barrier so that people couldn't grab those PDFs and share them. So it really depends on the philosophy of the publisher and their desire to make that content available or not. But either is completely technically feasible.
And can the archives be packaged on other media, like a portable hard drive or a memory stick?
They absolutely can. I think it's important to note that a lot of those technologies are very prone to accidental deletion today. There's not a lot of ways that you can protect a portable hard drive or a memory stick from someone accidentally jumping on and erasing a file. So you know, we've tested those mechanisms. They work fine technically. It's just whether it makes sense for the publisher to go in that direction, because it could potentially create some more customer service issues. But there are advances in those technologies coming weekly or monthly as well, where it may be very feasible shortly to have an option where it's quite well protected on a USB key. So that's one option, and I would say the other factor is cost for publishers, is that those devices tend to be a lot more expensive to ship, to produce, to brand. DVD is still a nice option because most people still have the ability to use a DVD, and they have support on their laptop or their desktop to be able to use that, but it's very cost effective.
Okay, well, I think that's it for questions. I don't think there are any more from the chat box.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thanks, Audrey.
So I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for coming today. And if we look at some next steps, we've got the webinar recording that's available. So if you're listening to the recording, thanks for doing that. And if you have not got that, we'll make sure we send that out to anyone who's attended today. As well, it will be posted on INM's YouTube channel, so you can search for Integration New Media on YouTube to access that. And we're putting together a new e-guide, which will be available in the next few weeks, and we'll make sure that that's available. If you'd like to get a copy of that, please feel free to request that. My contact info is here on screen, so it's my email and my phone number, and I would not hesitate for you to give me a call, please. Certainly if there's a project you want to discuss, if you have any questions about the content of this webinar that you want to chat about, just pick up the phone or drop me an email and I'd be happy to chat about that.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Andrea. That was a great presentation.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Andre.
Andre.